This is going to be a part of the series on what kind of dog I should get. So we're going to start out with labs. Now, you can look at labs as two different distinct breeds, the American Labrador and the English Labrador. You're, there are vast differences in these two particular dogs. You can get a lot of similar characteristics also. It really depends how far you want to go. So your American Labs are really much more focused on hunting. I would consider them to be much more of a sporting variety, although there's tons of different variations in American Labs too. So you may find dogs with genetics that are more supporting retrieving. They may also be pointing labs. They could be flushing labs. And pretty much all these dogs you can get to retrieve also, but there's different genetic qualities that you're looking for. And I'm not going to get into each individual use case. However, I think that it's important to note that these dogs are particularly bred for hunting in the United States variety. So how we hunt here is what these dogs are bred for. They hunt different things in different places and different species, and they might be looking for different characteristics in the dog. Your English Labs are pretty consistently, you can have some flushing English Labs, absolutely. I personally have never seen a pointing English Lab, but there could absolutely be some. They're typically they're going to do lots of retrieving, a lot of water retrieves. You're going to probably see less English Labs at a thing like field trials, stuff where there's going to be like a 200, 300 yard send away or something like that to a bird that's down. They're not necessarily, I think they tend to be slightly less athletic. They're still very athletic dogs, and if you keep them in good shape, you've got no problem with the dog actually continuing to complete all sorts of athletic endeavors. Now, energy requirements are a bit different. The things that you might notice when you look at an English Lab or an American Lab is a striking physical discrepancy. So your American Lab is tending to be much thinner. They have longer legs usually, and they are just a much trimmer dog. They typically have a shorter coat even, and they sometimes could have a double coat, but most American Labs have like a single coat, tiny, fine little hairs, whereas your English Labs tend to have a double coat, and they have, I believe that's particularly for more of like water work and like cold water work, I guess, is why that is desirable. But they're also much thicker. So the dog itself is thicker. So it's got a much bigger head. The head of an American Lab is narrower, more streamlined. You might find it more similar to like a houndy type head, whereas the English Lab, like some of these really blocky headed dogs have, it almost looks like it doesn't have the same angulation in like the jaws as like a Rottweiler, but you might find a dog with a head that's like almost that big as an English Lab. Big, chunky heads. Energy requirements follow in suit. You see a dog that looks like an absolute freak athlete, guess what? That dog's going to have higher requirements for energy expense. You're going to need to get that dog out and wear them out multiple times a day, or they're going to wear you out. They're going to wear your house out. They're going to wear your kids out. They're going to destroy stuff. And your English Labs have probably a slightly lower energy requirement. Hopefully you go out and play fetch with them a couple times a day and you're good. No big deal. But you can find an American Lab that's got about as much drive and energy as almost any dog that you're going to find. These things are absolute workhorses. You're not going to see, for example, you're not going to see very many couch potato American Labs. It's just not going to happen. You will definitely see some couch potato English Labs. And I've even come across some in like the pet dog realm that have very low drive for retrieval, which is definitely not desirable. But it happens a lot more with English labs than it does with American labs. So bigger, thicker dog, lower to the ground, big fat tail, double coat. That's going to be your English lab. American lab, slightly taller, definitely lankier, long skinny tail, shorter coat, single coat typically, and a little bit more angular face, narrower face, and a powerhouse. So and sometimes these dogs, you might see them next to each other and you'd be like, that's not even the same breed. Or that American lab looks like a puppy English lab or something like that. So those are things to recognize. In terms of dogs that I've actually trained, I've trained tons of both varieties. And I don't have any particular favorite on them, but they're definitely very different. I would say that if you don't intend on spending a lot of time giving your dog quality exercise, if you don't have a large property, if you're not a hunter, if you're not a runner, if you're not going to do things that are going to really specifically benefit your dog, like for exercise, just for exercise requirements, then I would steer away from the American Lab. Your American Lab, I mean, it is a performance bred beast. The English labs are going to be definitely much more of what I would call a pet dog variety or a pet dog friendly situation, a pet dog home. So if you can, if you can get your mind around that, if you're looking for a dog right now and you have a family and you're not going to start some new dog sport and you're not going to start competing a dog and you're not going to go hunting with your dog and you're not going to go hiking and things like that, you're probably going to look more towards the English lab. They're both, I would consider to be both very family friendly dogs. Of course, any dog could bite a kid or could have an aggressive streak or could be resource guarding or anything like that. But I would say that some of the lowest risk family dogs, and this is widely known, are going to be your Labradors. And they have a soft mouth. They have just a really strong desire to please. One of the reasons they have a really strong desire to please also is because they've been bred specifically on pretty harsh training. So field dog training is not for the faint of heart, so to speak. You can be pretty hard on dogs, and in this type of training, they can be pretty hard on dogs, and the dogs need to be able to handle that and then keep moving on for the next activity. So you don't want them to crumble under pressure. So if they put a lot of pressure on a dog and he survives it, he does well, he's thriving, still wants to go to work, that's awesome, cool. That dog progresses in training, therefore they're going to probably breed that dog. So those are things to think about, and then you end up with a dog that is similar to that. And they've historically just done mostly what they call pressure and praise, what we call pressure and praise, which is just good job, buddy, good boy. They're not using food training for hunting dogs. It's very rare that people use food for any training in that. The reward is the activity. You get to retrieve that bird, but also I'll make you retrieve that bird. So those dogs are built for that. They're built for a good pat on the head at the end of the day. You did a good job, buddy. And he said, oh, thank you. Oh, good boy. I love that. They're workhorses, absolutely. And this is both American and English. So those are things to think about. I think we can get into, they can get into trouble. If they've got a ton of drive, they can get into trouble just like any dog. Counter surfing, jumping on your counter, jumping on your furniture, this, that, whatever. They could definitely be boisterous and knocking kids over by being excited, jumping, things that involve getting close to people. They also have a tendency to be highly food motivated. So you take a super highly food motivated dog, give him lots of energy. He's going to be, he could be on your kitchen counter. He could be on the table. He could be trying to steal butter. He could be trying to steal grilled cheese from your kid. He could be digging up stuff in the backyard trying to eat it. These are all things that happen with dogs like this. However, most of it innocuous. I would say the biggest trouble with these dogs in terms of eating everything, it comes into foreign body surgeries. So your dog eats something he's not supposed to, he's got it inside of him, and oh, sorry, I got a call coming in. So if your dog is he's got something inside of him that he shouldn't have, he's got to go to the vet. You got to possibly do an exploratory surgery where you open up their abdomen and then find the spot in their intestine and take it out and be like, oh my gosh, look, it's 4 socks, it's 3 pairs of underwear, it's a kid's blanket, it's a toy, it's a stuffed dinosaur. And both of these dogs, any kind of lab, are like notorious for eating stuff like that. So those are things to think about. That's a possible health risk. That's obviously also a cost that could happen there. When you're looking at long-term effects or long-term kind of health problems, hips in the back end, they can get dysplasia, they can get blown out ACLs, things like that. Their back knees, back legs, really important that these dogs stay trim. The English Labs have a remarkable metabolism. They can eat a very, very small amount and still somehow retain tons of body fat. It doesn't even make sense to me. But I've had English Labs that eat like 2 cups a day that are 70 pounds. And I've also met dogs, American Labs, that are say 60 pounds and eat like 8 cups a day. It's wild. So the energy requirements of the dog dictate how much food you're going to feed them, so forth. But also you want the dog trim to save their hips and back legs. So that's huge. And obviously their back too. Skin problems, more common skin problems on the English Labs would be things like hot spots because they have that double coat, and then maybe some dry skin or dandruff or this or that. The American Labs have a higher tendency to have like worry spots, I would say, where they are like maybe licking at it repeatedly or this or that, and that comes from anxiousness, anxiety, lack of exercise, neuroticis or neuroses, something like that, where basically you have just too much energy and it's got to go somewhere, and maybe they're licking their paw until it's got a sore on it, something like that. The English Lab sheds like crazy, like one of the worst shedding dogs. And I guess I'm sorry to save that for the last part here, but they literally shed, it's an insane amount. So they got their double coat, they produce tons of fur, they produce tons of hair, and I think it's quite oily. That's like a benefit for if they're swimming a lot and so forth. The water pops off of it so that they, I guess, dry more quickly. But they do shed a lot, and you will have a lot of hair in your house. American Lab has less hair in general, which is like a less of a thick coat, and you will probably find that the hairs are a bit shorter. There will be slightly less of them, and there'll be shorter hairs, but short hairs are really hard to get out of furniture. They're really hard to get out of clothes because they just stick in every little crevice. So those are just some things to think about. There's obviously a ton more. If you have more follow-up questions on this, feel free to leave them in the comments. And I'm looking forward to talking about our next dog.